Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here at May's County Council meeting. It's 4 o'clock, so I'll call this meeting to order. If you'll stand, we'll pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilman Faulkner.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you that we can come to you with our prayers. I thank you for our community, and I thank you for the opportunities you give us here on the council. Father, I ask you to give us wisdom, give the leadership in the various departments in the county wisdom, help us to glorify you. Father, I also pray for those students who are graduating or will soon graduate, and just give them a good path forward. Help them to know the good things to do and to know about serving others. Father, help us with wisdom and help us with understanding and give us opportunities to serve. I pray all these things in Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen. Our first order of business will be to approve the minutes from the April 25th council meeting.
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
The motion has been properly made by Councilman Alexander and seconded by Councilman Faulkner. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion's approved. Thank you. We'll now move to additional appropriations. Madam Auditor, if you will, please.
Ordinance number 2023-HCCO-17, additional appropriations. Whereas it has been determined that it is now necessary to appropriate more money than was appropriated in the 2023 annual budget. Now therefore be it ordained by the County Council of Howard County, Indiana, that for the expenses of the taxing unit, the following additional sums of money are hereby appropriated out of the funds named for the purposes specified, subject to the laws governing the same. 2528 Family Recovery Court Grant Fund, Continuing Education, $5,000, Participant Transportation, $2,500, Special Projects and Incentives, $2,500, Intervention and Treatment, $500, Participant Housing, $2,000, Other Services and Charges, $2,500, Drug Screens, $2,500, Total Family Recovery Court Grant Fund, $17,500, Mental Health PSC Grant Fund, Incentives, $2,500, Travel and Training, $3,000, Drug Testing, $4,500, Total Mental Health PSC Grant Fund, $10,000, total additional appropriation for all funds, $27,500.
Thank you very much. We can have Judge Murray, please.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming.
My pleasure. It's a pleasure to see you and be here. I will be brief. I'm not asking for an additional appropriation. I'm not asking for any money from the county. Instead, I'm just asking for your approval and blessing on certain grant funds that were awarded to Circuit Court in the total amount of $17,500 for certain expenses to run our Family Recovery Court program. And our program has been in effect, oh, I'm sorry, the police? I'll call them back. Our program's been in effect since early 2019. We are a problem-solving court, one of two that Circuit Court runs. This one for CHINS parents, that's children in need of services, children that are removed from parents due to mostly substance abuse problems or mental health problems or other parenting problems. Through our Family Recovery Court, we're working with participants basically on a daily basis in which to solve those problems for them, and these monies help us do that. Some of the funds are used for necessary drug testing, participant treatment, or certain incentives, training. We help sometimes with housing expenses or transportation. Currently, we have 11 participants in our program. 2022, we had 16. We've had 2 people graduate already this year, 2023, several more who are set to do so. So I am asking for your approval and blessing since we've been awarded these grant funds and to be able to use them in our Family Recovery Court program.
Thank you. Are these state grants?
Yes,
State.
it's through the Indiana Office of Court Services, Supreme Court Administration.
Are there any questions or comments for Judge Murray?
I have a comment. I appreciate everything you do to help keep families together and have the support that they need. Appreciate you so much.
I'll second that. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you for your consideration.
Appreciate your time.
Sorry.
Judge Perry? Anyone from Judge Perry's office? Okay. Well, by golly, that's what we have for additional appropriations. We've heard from, I guess we'll table. Does the council feel comfortable tabling Judge Perry's request? I certainly do.
Does Jessica know any details about it?
This is for their grant, and
Is it a similar
a-
thing like Judge?
it's a state grant. We just need to be able to appropriate the money.
Hmm.
So, in my opinion, it'd be okay to approve both of them because they're state grants and we're just authorizing the fact that they received a grant and they want to use it.
I think,
For
well,
them.
I think what we need to decide, because we've talked about this before, I have no problem approving this use of this money. It's a grant, I have no problem with that. We've also talked about people need to be here, or we're going to approve. So I think we need to decide, does that include grants like this, or actually when they're asking for more money only?
Well, I see that we have Judge Murray and we have Judge Elkins here. And the money, though it may be a grant, it is the people's money. And we represent the people. And all we're trying to do is be good stewards of it. And Judge Murray was kind enough to educate us on all the good work she's doing with that money. And I think it's not asking too much for, for the representative to be here, at least from their office.
Question to Jessica. Okay, this has to be appropriated by the council in order to pass an audit for State Board of Accounts, right? What's the date from this grant? Is it January 1 to December 31, or is it July to
I think
June?
it's January. Is this
One
the
of one of
January?
those ones where it's not an extension, but it's an addition to the regular calendar year grant.
Okay.
So this is like this is like a one with a separate version of money, because that's why it was a little bit weird, because it also.
So how much time would he have to come back?
Well, he would just need to come and.
Okay.
Well, with, do we ask for a table or a motion for table that, Alan? Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to table it's been properly made and seconded by Councilwoman Lake and Councilman Alexander.
Is this gonna cause a burden of any kind that he's trying to move forward with, that?
Well, if, we would know if he was here, and we don't know. And we're just simply,
I mean, I get it,
yeah,
I get it.
and, but this is a council, and we're representative of the people.
I think the thing is, it was getting to be a problem where we had a lot of
Yeah.
folks not coming.
Yeah.
And we talked about this at a earlier meeting, I forget what month,
Yeah.
and I believe you sent out a memo too.
I certainly
to
did.
everyone.
Very
So
polite and
I
respectful.
just think we need to follow up on that.
So with that, all those in favor of tabling mental health grant fund, say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Motion carries. So we'll go for the additional appropriations for the Family Recovery Court Grant Fund.
So, Mr. President, I approve that we approve the additional appropriations for the Family Recovery Court Fund
Yes.
as presented.
Thank you. The motion's been properly made by Councilman Faulkner. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And properly seconded by Councilwoman Lake. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. The next order of business will be transfers.
Resolution number 2023-HCCR-7, transfers. Whereas the county council may approve the transfer of money from one major budget classification to another within a department or office. If the transfer does not require the expenditure of more money than the total amount set out in the budget as finally determined, as if the transfer is approved at a regular public meeting and by the proper ordinance. Be it resolved by the county council of Howard County that it is desired and deemed necessary that the following transfers be made within the accounts of the designated funds as set out below. County General Fund, Coroner Chief Deputy to part-time, $29,039.08. Unified Courts, transcripts to transcriptionist, $12,000.
Okay. If we could have Dr. Seeley, please.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Late last year, my chief deputy that I'd had for 6 years decided to go back to the private sector and took on another job. And so we used someone internally to promote to that position, and that did not work out. So what I want to do at this point, with a year and 7 months left in my term, by the time I tried to move someone through the schooling and everything, it would be January, February before I'd have them out on their own. So I came up with a plan that I can use my part-time people. I have a deputy that is able now to cover on weekends, so every other weekend. I work one weekend, he works the other, and so I want to transfer what is left for this in the salary amount to my part-time, so that I can keep this covered and bring us through the end of the year. We will then reevaluate that, as I've mentioned before, to see if this has worked, and if that's the case, then I will be back to do the same thing. Well, actually during budget hearings for next year, and then for the 2025, I'll reinstate that back over. I think I explained that we have to have 2 people on at all times. There's a lot of hours to be covered, and so I have to, I'm doing the stipend thing, and the employees also understand this is not a permanent situation, and if approved, then between Carrie and I and the county attorney, there'll be an agreement drawn up that the employees will be signing, that they understand this. This is not a permanent situation.
And it might be said that you came before the PAC committee.
Right.
And the PAC committee agreed unanimously.
Right.
And part of the reason why this is happening the way it is because your employees have a specific skill set
Right.
that
it cannot be duplicated or just found very easily. There's got to be heavy training involved and
Right.
Preparation.
That's correct.
Yeah. Is there any questions or comments for Dr. Seeley?
I just want to say, again, thank you for the email ahead of time. I think that's very helpful. I appreciate you sending those out.
Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judge Elkin?
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, this is my first time in front of you, so I will begin by making mistakes and hopefully improve later. As I come before you, we have sort of a situation as it involves the unified courts and how we've been paying people. The transcription, I guess we had a presumption that most people who were transcribing any transcript would be persons who are not Howard County employees. So I'll say we shop those out. What's happened over time, and it's where the issue comes, is a lot of them are internal, and then some of them are external. So the idea in this particular case, in the request of transfers, we now are going to have two funds. One is going to have monies that are payable to people who are hired that are outside I'll say, court employee staff. And this will permit us in transferring that $12,000 to allow employees that are already tracked in the county through the auditing system. So that request for the $12,000 is to go into the new account number that's been created. And that's where we are as far as that goes. And then, of course, we'll have to turn around and figure out. We're compiling the numbers right now as to not only how much money we used in transcripts last year, but whether those persons were internal versus external. So we know how to apportion it next year, and you have a better idea and you can track better. And of course, I could go back and talk about a few years ago, we obviously had some internal problems where we're getting billed, we're paying out transcripts, and it turns out that maybe those transcripts or the monies we were paying out weren't actually for transcripts that were created. So we ended up with a criminal case at one point in time. So that will hopefully clear this up. Any questions for me?
Can you expand on transcripts? Is this done after hours, during hours, on weekends?
It's going to be a little bit of all of that. If think of a traditional case in a court, we present evidence, there's testimony, we record everything. Somebody decides to go on an appeal. And if it's the public defender's office, there's a transcriptionist that will do that, or a transcriptionist who will do that, and they're generally associated with a particular court. Sometimes the court staff will be willing to do that, and they're not supposed to be doing those transcripts on court time or during the hours that they're supposed to be working. So in that case, they should be doing it in the evenings or on weekends. There are other persons, and I don't know if I can point out one person, Virginia Dougherty, who for many years was with the courts. She retired, and then she would do those privately. And she was working with all the courts. And so she could do those. If you needed a transcript done right away, you could call Virginia up and have her begin a transcript, and she could be doing those. And those would get done much quicker because she could do it from 8 to 5 or 8 to midnight or whatever. And what ends up happening is we had a situation where at least one person was billing for transcripts. You couldn't tell if they were doing it on or off hours, if they were associated. And we ended up, obviously, with a criminal case that occurred out of it. This particular situation, what we hope to do is if we have somebody who's doing transcripts and they're with the court, you can monitor that and make sure they're not doing it during court time. And if it's somebody who is external, then obviously you don't have to keep track of when they're doing it, just merely that they're getting it finished in a timely fashion.
Okay.
Matt, is there a contract for the ones that you're paying out of 32,190? I mean, do they have contracts? And this is like a salary number, that's 11,215.
I don't know the internal accounting aspect of it, but as far as the contracting goes, the state sets what the maximum fees are, and then by ordinance, we can set that too. And I didn't look at the ordinance before I came in, but there should be an ordinance, our local ordinance should say what we can charge for that. I've had people say that ours isn't high enough. I haven't checked that or compared it, and that would be what I would be involved with in the next couple of weeks as far as trying to put those numbers together. But I'm now compiling the numbers from all of last year and the year before to see what direction they're going, because we have certain items, at least outside of transcripts, things such as interpreters, where that amount that we pay for interpreters is going to substantially be increasing and it's slowly increased and it's going through the roof. I mean, a lot more translators, a lot more people who, even in your comment, divorces. So we're gonna run into a little bit more of this in how we run the unified courts budget, but hopefully if we spread it out amongst the courts, it'll still be about the same amounts, but we're gonna have to adjust.
I think this is a good idea. I think having these two different line items is a great idea to monitor that.
I agree with that, and one thing that I've, just as an attorney, that I've had a hard time keeping, I'll say, track of, because there's another way that court reporters can also get paid, and that is if we do a transcript privately. Okay, so these transcription costs are gonna have to do with cases that are required, is what I'm going to say. If I want to appeal something privately, if it was a divorce, I, as the attorney, and my client would have to pay for that transcript to be done. So when you hire the transcriptionist, that's coming out of your own pocket, and the county doesn't have to be concerned with the cost of that. But you would still need to be concerned with, if it were an employee of the courts doing that transcript and typing it up as far as time-wise. We have an internal policy in my court. I don't know that if that's true with all the other courts, but no one in my court at this time does transcripts, so I don't have to worry about that conflict. But if you have someone doing transcripts within your court, you just have to make sure that they're doing it on off hours. So you want that confirmation, and there's a couple of internal ways you can do that.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments? Thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much.
If there's no questions or comments, I will entertain a motion to accept the transfers as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been properly made and seconded by Councilwoman Lake and Councilman Alexander. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Transfers, motions have passed. Thank you. Next order of business will be the salary ordinance amendments.
Ordinance number 2023-HCCO-18, salary ordinance amendments. An ordinance amending and increasing staffing and salary authorization to be paid county employees for the calendar year effective January 1, 2023 through December 31st, 2023, as originally approved for the year 2023, except where otherwise noted. Be it ordained by the Council of Howard County, Indiana, that for the said fiscal year, the following salary amendments are approved as additional changes to the basic salary ordinance for the same fiscal year. Necessary personal services appropriations have been approved previously to support that required expenditure of necessary funds. County General, Coroner, Chief Deputy, reduction $29,039.08. Part-time, $29,039.08. Unified Courts, transcriptionist, $12,000.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. Are there any questions or comments about the salary ordinance amendments, council members? I'll entertain a motion.
Move we approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been properly made by Councilman Faulkner and seconded by Councilman Cuthbert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is passed. Thank you. Is there any old business to tend to? We have some new business. We have with us Dr. Matt Oliver. He's the Executive Director of Turning Point, and he's going to share with us how Turning Point's doing.
All right, thank you for having me. I'm gonna put some handouts real quick. If you take one and pass by that.
Thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to come and provide some information regarding Turning Point's activities. As stated, my name is Matt Oliver. I've been working with Turning Point as the executive officer for the past 2 years, and prior to that, I worked as a board member. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure that the county council is our appreciation for the county. Hands down, we could not have basically made the vision of a recovery stabilization center a reality without the support of the county. Whether it's the support of the building, whether it's the support of operational funds, we've been able to, I'm glad to say, operate the Recovery Stabilization Center since November of last year. And so what you have in front of you is a summary of activities for 2022, but we wanted to kind of give it Q1 to basically say, let's be able to report back how many people we've actually served through the 12-bed Recovery Stabilization Center. And I'm glad to be able to report that that's over 200 people. Last year, Turning Point served over 1,500 discrete individuals. Generally, in any given month, we're serving roughly 450 people. Most of those individuals are from Howard County, but I think it's important to take note that we are getting referrals for our stabilization center that come from Tippecanoe County, that are coming from Gas City and Marion. We're getting people from Greenwood, south side of Indy. We're getting people from South Bend because of what we're doing. What we're doing is effectively saying we have options besides outpatient and inpatient care for detox and recovery stabilization. And that's a huge opportunity for helping people get access to care. Moreover, one of the things that we're doing is making sure that we're working with law enforcement partners. Our Sheriff's Department has been hugely involved with being aware of the center. Our local police department, the Chief Stout's team, is very aware of their stabilization center. And what that means is we are working towards making sure we help people get into treatment and into recovery versus just putting more people in jail. If you take a look at the jail census, most people are there for substance-related charges. And the judiciary knows it, law enforcement teams know it, and we've been very blessed to be able to say, let's work together to make sure we're able to reduce pressure on the jail and help people get access to people that have been through this before. When you look at Turning Point, what's different about Turning Point is that it's a recovery community organization, which means that we have most of our staff there are people in recovery. And that does a couple of important things. It means that people, when they come in, they're typically greeted by people that have been there, that have been homeless, that have been incarcerated, that have basically struggled through all the challenges of just getting into recovery. It makes a huge difference. And when you look at that second page that talks about care experience, it shows more times than not, people have said, this is a distinctively different space. I feel it differently because I'm treated differently. When you have people that have been in recovery, working as our nurses or working as our peers, it makes a huge difference. And so I see it as a badge of honor to honestly say that most of our staff have felonies. I know that sounds a little weird, but it's true. But we also have most of our staff that are also in recovery have professional degrees and licenses, which says people are more than just an illness or just a substance use or a mental health issue. So the reality is now a reality. The center is operating and functional. And it's not just that we did the 12 beds for stabilization and detox. We also did 2 crisis chairs, which allows us to observe individuals that may come in that may not really have any substance use issues going on. And that happens pretty regularly. We may have individuals that come from the shelter that are not appropriate or not stable enough for the shelter, and we may need just time more to get them navigated, to get them either to a treatment facility, or they may need to end up going to the hospital. We very much appreciate our law enforcement partners that definitely have helped come on site or have helped us get people to the hospital when appropriate, and also appreciate the fact that we work very closely with the emergency departments so that when people are medically cleared, that they're able to come back to the stabilization center to get their care. And so you see a lot of coordination. But again, this really couldn't happen for the county. It's tremendously helpful to be in the building that we're in, because not only do we have a stabilization center there, we also have the recovery cabinet, also have rapid access navigation. And what that means is 24/7, you can walk in, call in, or you can bring somebody there, but it's open 24/7. So that's the only thing close to that is the emergency room, but much cheaper strategy to make sure people have access to recovery care through a sub-acute environment than just to have it in the hospital. So again, the partnerships are there, they work well together, and it's great to see this in play.
the thing that I wanted to mention about the Recovery Cafe. Recovery Cafe is not a treatment facility space per se. What it is a space where people can come in. The only requirement is that you can't be intoxicated. And if you come in, you might be able to share a meal. You might be able, you're generally coming in to build relationships with other people in that community. If you think about our homeless population, many of them have high distrust of treatment providers. Many of them don't want to be involved in treatment. And so what happens is they come in and start to build a relationship, and they start to think, maybe I should work for the coach, or maybe I should see a therapist, or maybe I should get some medication. Not for what people are telling me I need medications for, I'm not really ready for that, but maybe for the anxiety I feel, because it fuels how much I drink. When you meet people where they're at, and you help them feel like they belong and are included, they engage differently. And that's an important piece that I want to make sure you are aware of, because it helps our continuum of care. I've been in behavioral health for a long time. The things that we do at Turning Point absolutely enhance and strengthen our community safety net. We couldn't do it without health. We couldn't do it without community health center. We couldn't do it without law enforcement. We couldn't do it without many of our housing agencies. We need Wabash. We need First City. We need all those places that are helping us, FSA, CAMP, you name it, to get people into housing, because places and things is a real thing. And so Turning Point helps address those people, places, and things, and works with all these partners to address some of these issues. But it did not happen without the county, and so I just want to make sure that I'm giving a report that you're aware of the great work that I think you're doing. So with that, let me see what questions you might have.
Could you explain a typical person who would utilize a stabilization center? What happens there? What goes on?
When persons come into the stabilization center, they're going to be greeted by generally our peer techs.
Let me stop you just a second. Are they at that point either drunk or under the influence at the point they come in?
Often are.
Okay.
If they are sufficiently intoxicated, they may need to be referred to the emergency department to get clear. And so when they come in, we'll call, whether it's St. Vincent or community, and let them know we're sending a person to you. When they get cleared, feel free to bring them, to let us know. We'll come get them and bring them back to the stabilization center. So if you have people that, and we've seen a whole lot of stuff that's sometimes drug related, sometimes just medically related. If you got somebody that's got blood sugars way off the charts, you may have coma risk. So they'll be communicating with the hospital. If you have people that have alcohol in the 300 levels, we're worried about coding. We can't have them code in a subacute unit. So we'll get them to the ED and then basically let them know, and then have them, we'll go pick them up when they get cleared. If we have to get them transported back in a situation like that, usually we'll call an ambulance so they can be medically monitored while they're transferred. If we have individuals who came to us where they looked like they were stable, but they may have ingested something on their way over to Turning Point, and then when they get to Turning Point, they're floridly psychotic and highly agitated. We generally would call our law enforcement partners, because we need somebody who can move them safe, and we're not sure what's really going on, but we suspect it's not a medical issue, maybe a drug-related issue. So drugs sometimes kick up and then they come back down, and it just depends on what's going on. So the nice thing is that we always have our medical director on standby. We have our nursing team that works very closely with our full-time nurse practitioner, and they're looking at all of those clinical issues to make sure we provide a safe experience, make sure that people are admitted appropriately. Be admitted to the stabilization center, you not only have to agree to a variety of terms. They have to turn over their phone. They have to basically agree to being kind of in a blackout so they can focus on getting into recovery rather than the drama they may have at home. They have to focus on, they have to agree to engaging in care. And then we also then work with them to look at what are the recovery capital needs. Are they homeless? Do they have a job? Do they have family members? Are those family members supportive of the recovery? Are there a whole lot of chaos going on that could destabilize any recovery gains that they may have? One of the biggest observations I've had over the past few months is you can go to a 28-day program, and that's fabulous, but it does very little to help what's going on in their natural environment. You have to work with coaches that help people walk side by side, by walking side by side with them to help them feel appreciated. The reason why humans do things is mostly emotional. It doesn't have to do with the information that we know. It's, do I feel cared about? Does this help me meet my needs? And so having a recovery community makes it a mind change. It provides an opportunity for people to live differently. And it's usually those relationships that initiate people to start making choices, to start putting their lives together. But you can't send them away and then have them come back and then expect they're going to take care of their housing, their job issues, their relational trauma, or other issues. So having people in the stabilization center and building out that continuum of care is really important. The other piece I'll mention is we talked about the 2 crisis observation beds, about the 12 stabilization beds, but the Bridge Clinic is a huge investment. The Bridge Clinic is, we want to make sure that people, when they leave the stabilization center, they've got medications, and it's not just like Suboxone or Vivitrol or other kinds of medication-assisted treatment. It's the full swap of psychiatric meds. You would not be surprised to see that we have a lot of people coming through that have bipolar disorder, that have depression, have huge amounts of anxiety and trauma. And if you don't treat those things, they're going to start drinking or using for other reasons. So that Bridge Clinic really makes a difference in terms of getting people stabilized, not just from an addiction standpoint, but also from a mental health standpoint. When we have people in the jails, working in the jails to help people re-enter the community, that's a huge thing, because people don't get to pack their bags when they go to jail. So they may be coming out and literally having nothing. And they need somebody that's going to say, hey, I'll walk side by side with you. I know all about getting your government IDs back. I know all about helping you get to food pantry or other spaces, the housing strategy. And just walking through, because you may have a lot of anxiety. What you most likely do is, I'm going to go back to what I know, which may contribute to why you went to jail first. So again, that reentry strategy is important. But the Bridge Clinic, if I have people if they can work with QCC at the jail and get a Vivitrol started, they can work with Turning Point to continue that once they leave the jail if they've not had another partner established, whether that be community or county, clean slate or whoever. We want to make sure people have access to that care, because if I can keep them from reusing, then they don't go back to jail. If I can keep them from using to put their lives back together, be productive citizens. So all of these things go back to that fundamental kind of focus that Turning Point has. Let's see what the needs are and do our best. That's why, again, you have done so much financially on Turning Point, and I want you to know that's a good thing. I want you to know that I personally feel like it's been a huge thing. If you talk to the peers that were talking, to a number of the individuals that were talking this morning, just at the fundraiser, telling their stories, they can say, look, 2 months ago I was homeless. Today I'm volunteering at the Recovery Cafe. Have my way to, I've got a safe and secure place to lock the door at night and get good sleep without having to watch the pornography. And I'm pretty close to housing is a tricky thing. It takes a lot longer than life to take. But at least they're on the path. They got their buddy that's helping them. So those are the reasons when you get asked about why do you support Turning Point, I want you to be able to say these reasons. And the paper and say, this is why, because it makes our community strong.
How long would a person, if they come into the stabilization center, they don't need to go to jail or to the hospital, how long might they stay there? Are we talking overnight or several weeks?
That's a great question. If you take a look at the bottom left-hand corner there, it's going to show the average length of stay, average daily census. So from November, you can see that we were just getting started. Average length of stay was 3 days. Now it's up to 7 days. When we had envisioned the stabilization center, we thought, okay, well, we want to make sure people can get in and they get transferred to 28-day programs and then basically go sober living. And so it would be pretty rapid. What we're finding is it's probably more helpful to have people stay a bit longer and then work in the natural communities. People get local care. Because again, going to Evansville for a retreat is great, but that doesn't mean that you're taking care of stuff here locally. So they need to basically work on it locally. But you can see that we're actually, our average daily census continues to grow. Our average last month was 9, and capacity is 12. So that means you're nearly full all the time, but not totally. But then your length of stay is increased. So that we maintain a network of programs. So what's important to know is we never do wait lists. If we do a wait list, we may see what we have seen, which is people leave and then are coming back, but then they may overdose. They don't know what to take because it's laced with all sorts of things. It's a gamble. So with us, if they ever show up, if they need treatment, we want to get them connected, whether through us or somebody else, we'll get them done. That's why 24/7 walk-in, we will get you linked to a program. Medicare, that takes no insurance, whatever it is, commercial insurance, we'll get you linked up. Because I don't want you to go, even using meth, which never kills anybody generally, but nowadays, when it's laced with fentanyl, it'll kill you. It can kill you. So it's just, the game has changed. So that's how so yeah, they're generally staying maybe 7 to 10 days. And then, I think you'll see Turning Point moving towards more residential solutions over time. But that's really what it is. So we work with Wabash Recovery pretty extensively to make sure that people can get to sober living. But if they need more intensive work, we'll just find what's the right treatment center, is the right continuum of care. Mockingbird Hill is a really good one because they have intensive residential housing. They also have primary care and mental health stuff that's pretty well integrated. So it just depends on what the person.
One last question. You mentioned several mental type of illnesses and medications you have. Do you also have people there who, if a person has mental health issues, you have people there who are licensed, I guess, are qualified for mental health counseling apart from the medication part?
Yeah, we have 4 therapists on staff at this point. 2 years ago, we had 0. But I think Turning Point's rapidly evolving. I kind of chuckle when I think about it. I remember what I thought about it when I said, okay, so this is great, it's good work. I think what you see now, we've become much more legitimate. We now are Joint Commission accredited. We had to become Joint Commission accredited so we open so many things that you have to do to follow. So the fact that you have Joint Commission accreditation says you're not just good people trying to do good things. You got to be pretty legit. You got to basically make sure you're monitoring all the credentials of your therapists, your nurse practitioners, make sure they're solid and primary source verified. So I think you see us growing up, which is a great thing, and then more pressure on it. But it is what it is, and it's a great challenge.
Couple of questions. First off, thanks for the update. The age of the people in the stabilization center, is it spread out over a wide thing? Is it a narrow age group? Is it like early 20s, late 30s, 50s, 70s?
Yeah.
Any patterns there that you would recognize?
The median age is in the early 40s. We see people in their low 20s all the way up into their upper 60s. You're seeing people all
So
over
across
the
the whole spectrum.
Yeah, it's the whole spectrum. So we don't take anybody that's younger than 8. You have to make sure they're able to ambulate. They have to walk. They have to be able to themselves or toilet and stuff like that. So they have to have basic ADLs. But generally speaking, we take a lot of people from the hospital. According to Michelle, our nurse manager, the feedback for Turning Point is, I really appreciate how receptive you are to it. We've had people with significant wound care issues, shooting up with IVs. That with the nurse on staff, they know how to change dressings like that. But if they can't toilet themselves or feed themselves, then we try to be as supportive. But we really see all sorts of adults, and not just with addiction issues or mental health issues, but also just
So my second question is about this map with Indiana color-coded.
Yep.
I can't read the fine print. Is there significance to the red color codes around Howard County, and what is the significance of the color codes?
What that map refers to a regional recovery hub. Turning Point is recognized by the state and by Mental Health America Indiana as a region for resources for recovery. I guess a nutshell, recovery coaches are a very new space for behavioral health in the state of Indiana. A few years ago, they asked Turning Point, would you take on this kind of north central several counties, 6 counties, and work in those counties to further the work? We don't know how we'll fund you, It'll largely be done through grants. So if you can work in Tipton County, if you can work in Miami County, or Wabash County, we will try to support you if we can. And so those are ongoing discussions about how do we engage with addiction recovery or prevention councils in other counties. We do work with those other counties. Most of our activities are here in Howard County, mainly because of the economics. The state's trying to figure out, do we fund peer recovery support services through Medicaid, or do we do it through grants? Largely right now, they're on grants, and you can only do so much with grants because you can't scale on them. You just work within the constraints. But most of those grants really happen to be focused on the things that we're doing here in Howard. There are other organizations that work with peers in those other counties, but yet we do still work with community stakeholders to understand their needs and then basically build out infrastructure. But that's a developing space for the state as they're trying to figure out how do we make sure what we're doing here in Howard County can be spread across the state. What I can say is, I think to much of the credit of our community, not so much Turning Point, but of our whole community, because it takes everybody. I think Howard County is seen at the state level as a very progressive space because of the nature of the collaboration that we do. And so I just think that's a great thing. But they're still trying to figure out how do I get that to happen in a much more rural county like Carroll County. So that's what they're doing.
One final question is about your staff. Stable, or have they said, you know what, better opportunity over in Lafayette or Indianapolis or something? Have you experienced any turnover in staff? Is that a problem? Are you concerned about that? Are there bonuses other people are giving to those people with those skills that say, hey, come work with us over in some other county?
No, I think staffing is always an important issue. Our turnover, if I look at overall, here they talk 4%. If I look at people in the peer space, it's much higher, but it's not dramatically higher. What I see is people are very sensitive to inflation. People really, we've done a survey in the past 2 months on this issue. When I ask why are people here, they're here for mission. About a third of them say, I'm not looking for another job. About another third of them say, I've considered other jobs because of money. And so that sends a very clear signal to me that people want to be a Turning Point, but they're also practical. They're also trying to figure out, how do I take care of my family? And so that's where it comes back into, okay, how do we fund this mission that's so important in a way that's market competitive with fast food or manufacturing? They certainly have those opportunities. Thankfully, we've been able to be fairly consistent, but we have our fair share of turnover. Some of that turnover is appropriate and healthy. Some of that is just regrettable because of the economics. So that's where I feel like, we'll see what the state wants to do, but the more that they can invest in peers, I see that as inevitable. If you're thinking about it, you'll never have enough therapists or nurses or doctors to meet the behavioral health need. So invest in peers that can give you an extender provider that will basically help engage people. That's I think in the end where the state will go. But thankfully at the moment we've been able to hold on to our teams, but every day it's on my mind. Because how do we make sure we provide incremental raises? How do we make sure we're doing it?
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions?
I have a question. It says here on the first page, under the note, 62% of the services rendered are not billable to third-party payers. So that's what the grants do. Do you bill insurance or?
Yep, so all the stuff that we do in the jail is not billable. All the stuff that we do in schools is not billable. We have about 2.5 FTE that work in Maple Crest Middle School. It's been hugely successful for the schools. Our focus was, how do we interrupt the prison, school prison pipeline? Meaning, when kids drop out of school, they're much more at risk for substance use, much more at risk for poverty, and much more at risk for criminal justice involvement. So if we're able to do mentoring and work side by side with our community health center partners, help kids make sure they're graduating, especially as we look at our stats. We see more grandparents raising kids than we've ever seen them. We see more single parents. We see, have you seen what your kids are doing in school these days with the electronic platforms and Canva, remote learning? Most parents, most grandparents are totally overwhelmed by that. So having kids that may be struggling in the margins be able to stay in school and graduate is a huge investment. So that's what those grants do, and we can't bill those. That's not insurance billable. But that's why you see a good fair share of what we do has to be funded through grants. And in my mind, I think, again, that's another reason why Turning Point's helpful, because the opportunity cost would be too high in more formal treatment spaces. Meaning, there's not enough money in it, it's not gonna pass the overhead test. So Turning Point being a smaller organization is able to fit these kind of niches that may not be feasible for other organizations.
Are the folks who utilize your services responsible for any of the payment for the services?
We have a sliding scale, but most people, and this is a funny video, kind of stuff left. Most people actually will qualify for HIP or Medicaid. Very rarely will we have somebody that's a true self-pay. The only typical situation when you see true self-pay is where I got a family trust that I can't get into, but I basically have to report it to Medicaid. It says I got $1 million there, and yet I'm working at a gas station, or I'm way underemployed. Medicaid's going to say you have too much assets. You got to choose: you spend your assets, or not. If you spend your assets, then you qualify for Medicaid. If you don't spend your assets, you don't qualify because you have too much resource. But most people aren't sitting on a family trust. So oddly enough, when we ask what are the needs that people come in with, most of we use the recovery capital scale, 35 items. Most people have all sorts of needs: housing, employment, stuff like that. Last on that list is typically access to health insurance. So wherever your politics, I suppose you could say the Accountable Care Act and Medicaid expansion has done its job, because most people aren't concerned about that. But it can affect some people. But we do have sliding scale. So in my book, no wrong door, and you should have access to care regardless of your ability.
One last question, Dr. Oliver, and that is in the bottom left-hand of the first front page there, you have some acronyms, and one of them is ADM, number sign.
Yep, that's the admissions. So those are the discrete admissions that happened in that month. You can see that, when we first started that first month, we got 23 admissions. March, we had up to 47. April, we had 38. And that's largely because we're having people stay longer to get the care that they need. And so, when you think about it over a period of time, I think we're around 250 or so individuals for this month since November. So it's the word's out, collaboration's happening, and that continuum of care is just.
Would you expect it to be seasonal, like during winter time, maybe more mental health
Well, it's just
problems
funny.
or
I
not?
was talking to the buyer, and she says, summer does funny things. People get arrested a whole lot more. And so I suspect you're going to see, some seasonality to it. If you got more pressure from probation and from judiciary saying, get yourself in a treatment, I imagine it would see elevated numbers. But we'll see. They don't put since November. I do know that, the jails probably going to say, in summer, when it's hotter, you've got more people out there drinking alcohol, going their recreational time. You're going to see more violations.
Congratulations, that's a great story.
Hey, thank you. Genuinely, it could not have happened without you.
Thank you.
Dr. Oliver, thank you for coming before us today and sharing the knowledge and the good work that your Turning Point and your staff is doing for our community. This is a new program, and it's just a bit stunning, actually, to get a glimpse of the work you're doing and the effects, the positive effects it'll have on our community and for the lives of the people who come seek your help. It's just a bit stunning, and I want to thank you for coming in. Thank you. Next order of new business, I'd like to formally welcome new Councilman Brett Sanders. Brett, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Really happy to have you here. You want to say anything?
It's an honor to be here, and hope we can serve the community well, and thank you for the privilege of being with you.
Well, welcome aboard. Glad you're here. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Been properly made by Councilwoman Lake and seconded by Councilman Faulkner. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion has passed. Meeting is adjourned.